Hey there and welcome back to my channel. My name is Allie and I'm a watercolor artist, and today we are going to be painting a really fun springy watercolor tutorial. So we're going to be painting a really nice whimsical watercolor floral design that you can use to create for cards, greeting cards. So I think this would be a really beautiful one to send, at any time of the year, but especially during the spring and the summer months. And now that we are coming up on spring, I thought this would be such a fun tutorial to get us in the mood. Now, if you're brand new to watercolor, don't worry. I have provided for you a printable outline where you can go ahead and download that in the description below. You can sign up for it and it'll send straight to your email inbox, and then you can go ahead and either print it out and trace or sketch it right onto your watercolor paper to make it so much easier to just get started with painting. Now, the supplies I'll be using today are just really some basic supplies, so don't worry if you don't have the exact same supplies as I do. I just want you to go ahead and just have fun with this tutorial. But if you are interested in getting any new supplies, I have linked my Amazon storefront down below in the description, where I share all of my favorite watercolor supplies that you can take a look at. So let's go ahead and grab our watercolor paints and get started painting. I am going to be using a size 6 for the majority of this painting today. So any medium to small pointy round brush will do perfect. And then I'm just going to go ahead and get started by wetting my brush. And let's go and just choose any flower. I am going to be working on the flowers first, and then I'll go through and do the greenery. And then I plan to do a really nice light wash background. So I am going to get started. I'll probably work on this side just because I am naturally right-handed, so it makes more sense. So if you need to, go ahead and rotate your paper depending on if you're right-handed or left-handed. Okay, so for this flower, I think it'll be fun to make it kind of a magenta, purpley color. So I'm going to start by grabbing my my permanent rose, which is that pinky color I have, that bright pink. And then I'm also going to add, I try and get rid of most of that paint on my brush, but I'm going to add a little bit of our cerulean blue to that, and that's going to give me that really pretty purple color. I don't have a ton of paint on my brush, mostly water, and I'm just simply going to fill in this flower shape. So I have my outline printed here. You certainly could trace it however you need to, or you could even just sketch this one by eye. Should be a pretty easy one to sketch. So I'm just working on filling in my flower shape without filling in the center, which is going to be the center of our flower. I'm going to leave that for a little bit later. All right, so I painted that piece in that purple color. Before that fully dries, I am just going to pick up a little bit of our just plain old pink that we have in our palette, and I'm just going to drop it in kind of around where the middle of the flower is with that wet on wet technique, and it's going to give that really pretty blooming effect of that bright pink playing with our purple color that we created. And depending on how much water you had on your paper when you created that purple, it might bleed quite a bit. So if you want it to bleed a little bit less, just make sure you don't have quite so much on the paper. So mine bled quite a bit, becoming more of a pinky flower, but that's okay. So I'm going to move on to this main flower. I think it'll help us just visualize the entire painting a little bit better. And I'm going to work on creating it mostly in just our pink. So I'm just going to work with the permanent rose color and filling that in. I have, I would say, a light to medium amount of paint and water on my brush. Maybe a little bit heavy on the water than I prefer, but I think it'll be nice for blending and dropping in other colors similar to what we just did with our other flower. And again, I can pick up more of that pink color if I run out. It's okay if some of your petals are darker or just have more paint to them. Gives it a little bit more of that lifelike feel with a flower, since it is a natural object. And again, don't worry about being perfect within the lines, just making sure that we get it filled in so you can kind of see one side is a little bit darker with more of that color and the other side is lighter and brighter. I'm going to get rid of that paint on my brush, maybe just pick up a little bit of water to add into my alizarin crimson, which is that red color. And I am just going to use that to drop in around the center area of this pinky flower that we just painted. So again, we will paint in the center with that yellow, but not right now. We're just going to work on the fun bright colors of our petals. Okay, let's work within those same colors just so we can kind of hit a few more flowers and make this painting feel more balanced. So I'm going to work back with that purple color we mixed up. You might need to mix up more, and if so, it's that blue, that cerulean blue, mixed with our permanent rose pink color. Don't worry if you don't get it perfectly mixed up the same as our first one. Just something somewhat similar. I'm going to put one over here just to help balance that color scheme a little bit. And working around that center. That's why I love this style of brush, this medium size pointed round, because I can use thin pressure to get in those tiny little areas, and I can use thicker pressure just to cover up the petals a little bit more. All right, let's grab our pink and drop that in. I'm just going to drop a little bit in, and again, depending on how much water I had on or with the purple will dictate how much of the bleeding or blooming effect will happen. All right, let's see. I think we need to work in another purpley flower, so I'm going to grab that one more time. I will put that one right here to do a nice trio before we go adding in other colors of flowers. The background is going to be a light sky blue. So just colors that play nicely with blue. All right, which a lot of colors play nicely with blue, so that's going to be an easy task. Okay, grabbing our pink. Oops, see, that was quite a bit of water I had on my brush, and I don't like that look because really my pink is just going to get lost. So I'll get rid of that paint on my brush, and then I'll just add in that little bit. So that one, I love how that came out. I added quite a bit of pink. If you want to go through and add more pink to some of your purple flowers, feel free. So you can see this one that we first started with already started to dry. So then when I added that pink there, it stayed put with the wet on dry technique. But the wet on wet is going to let it bloom and do really fun things. All right. So fun. Love the way that turned out. We're going to start to add in now another color of a flower. And that, I think, will be yellows, because how can you not have little yellow daisies? So here I have a really bright yellow in my palette. Like very bright yellow, which is fun and cheery. I think I'll just go with it for now, but I'll use a little bit more water so it's not super saturated. So let's see. I know I want to have a yellow flower up here. Be very careful to not bump your other flowers. I'm just going to fill in those petals. All right. So just like that. Okay, so again, I'm just going to let that dry, and I'll worry about the center part of the flower later. Let's grab a little bit more of our bright yellow and add it in down here to help balance our painting, like so. All right. And let's see, 2 is nice. I think that looks nice. I might go back through and add another yellow piece to this, but for right now, I'm just looking around to see how the balance is coming along. This would make a nice yellow flower, and yeah, so, or this could make a nice yellow flower here. I personally think I want to add in one more of this really bright pink, and I think I'll do it down here. Putting it right next to each other is just too much attention of that same color. So I'm just grabbing my bright pink from my palette like so. We'll just pretend this is like a little small young budding flower compared to this guy up here. All right. So that one's kind of looking like it's coming up the side. I'll grab a little bit of our alizarin crimson. I'm just going to add it in kind of, oops, down along the bottom like so. So that one's not going to have a center per se. All right. I can't wait to see how this all comes together. Again, we are going to do a bluish background, so I'm just kind of taking a look around to see what we could do and how we could balance these out. I think up here it would be nice to do kind of like a muted bluish color flower. So let's grab our cerulean blue, and I'm just going to add a little bit of our Payne's gray with that. It's going to darken it. I'm just going to kind of see how that looks. That looks a little too maybe gray for me. So to brighten that up, I'm going to bring more cerulean blue into that. And let's make it a little bit more on the periwinkle side. So if I wanted to do that, I'm just going to grab a little bit of our pink and add it into that combo we already created. So this is just the constant playing of colors until we get something that we like. And I'm not sure I'm there yet, so I'm just going to add more blue. I definitely want it to be more blue than purple. All right, that's looking better. If I compare it to down here, looking more blue. Okay. So kind of a medium amount on my brush. We'll go ahead and fill in this little flower up top here. Yay, and I think that looks really, really nice. Just to help break up all those bright, warm colors that we have so far. And I think we have another one right next to itself right here. And then I'll probably add in one more of that color. And maybe I should have added it into the outline, which I did not do. So we could put it, I think it needs to go down here. I think it'll just help balance it out much better. So I'm just gonna add one little of the blue, periwinkle blue flower down here and just kind of do a fun little jagged shape just to kind of mimic what's going on up there. Okay, so again, I know I have one more flower to create, and I think that needs to be the yellow flower just to help balance it. So I will get rid of all that paint. I'm going to grab my bright yellow and just going to fill that one in right there. Okay. Yay, looking great so far. And again, I know that they look super loose, but I think that's the fun part about this greeting card. Okay, so I've been patiently waiting for some of these very first flowers we painted to dry. So I plan to create the centers once those dried, and so I'll go ahead and start doing that right now. I'm going to use my bright yellow. I'm not going to use a ton of water, just a lot more paint. And all I'm going to do is just paint little dots and try to leave little whites of the paper kind of poking through. And I might even paint some kind of right over top of the pink area, like so. You might find that it will stand against that pink or it might disappear. The best way to help it stand on top of that pink is just to make sure you have quite a bit of paint, not so much water on your brush. Okay, I'm gonna grab more of that yellow and add it into our purple. These are smaller flowers, so don't worry if it just gets kind of lost. Is in like a little blob for the center there. Can you see that? Okay. The brighter yellow flowers, this one might be still wet, but I'm going to proceed with their centers, and I'm going to use the yellow ochre. So kind of the same technique, just going to dab a few little dabs in there. And looks like that stayed put. Okay. Looking very pretty. I know it looks like it needs to come together with all of the greenery, which we will go ahead and do right now. I'm going to make a little bit of room on my palette to mix. If you need to do that as well, you can always use just another paper towel and put it into your water jar just to kind of wipe and soak up an area like that. Okay, I'm going to continue on with my size 6, and this is where we're going to move to using our sap green. So it's a pretty bright green, but we can get a lot of different green hues from this one color. And I'm going to do that with color mixing. So one of the colors I love to create is kind of a more brighter green, yellowy green color with our yellow ochre. And then I like to also mix in a little bit of blue. So here I have my ultramarine blue. So I'm going to grab some of that, and then I'm going to grab a little bit of our green here, and that's just going to create a little bit of a darker value of that green. So now you can kind of see those 3 different greens playing with each other. Okay. The best way to go is to kind of use a variety of these greens throughout the painting. So I'll just work with the kind of medium to darker green that I have right here on my palette, and I'll start just with this one fun big green leaf here by my pink flower. And what I was able to do is press lightly at the top, press down a little bit more to fill in the belly of the leaf, and then bring my brush up with less pressure. Okay, so now I'll go ahead and grab a little bit of a lighter green, and I will fill in this side over here. So it might just be that you have to kind of draw them in ways, but don't worry, just as long as we can kind of work them and fill them in and follow our outline that we have here. So grabbing any green, I'm going to run that all the way down the stem here like so. And there we have one of our green color, or our leaves here. And now I'll add a little bit more of that darker green, mixing our ultramarine blue with our sap green. And if I drop that into some of our leaves like this, it's just going to create that really nice blooming effect like we did with our flowers. So let's just continue on grabbing maybe a little bit of a lighter green here. We just want to show variety of colors within our leaves. Okay, then grab a little bit of our darker one and drop that in towards the bottom part there. And let's continue. So again, you might just need to continue to mix up our greens as we go. So here's a little bit of a lighter green with our yellow ochre. Let's fill in that one right there. I think what I'll do is just fill in some of these leaves all over with the same color I have already on my brush. So just pick some, does not matter. I'm just going to fill in some of these leaves and just do a nice balance throughout. Do a light one over here, some over here. And then this will make a lot more sense when we go through and add in darker colors. Let's see. And again, you don't need to worry about following exactly which leaves I paint. You really can't mess this up as long as you just pick some, and this will be kind of the effect that we create at the end. All right, grab one up here, and I think that looks good. I'm going to stop there with my lighter color green. And now I'm going to grab some of our medium green. You can add a little bit of the sap with the ultramarine blue. Gives us that really pretty green. All right, and again, now we're just going to fill in other leaves that we have not filled in yet. And we'll do those stems at the very end. So be careful not to overlap some of the green leaves that we've already painted. And that way it'll give it more of a layering, some in the forefront, some in the background. All right. And again, maybe you want to make some even darker, just add more ultramarine blue into our green. All right, let's see. Do this one back here. That one got a little messy, but again, this is a loose style. You really can't go wrong. Just enjoy, relax, and see what comes out of it. Do this one up here. And again, if I continue to paint and not pick up more paint on my brush, the leaves will naturally start to get a little bit lighter in their value anyways. So that's really a nice effect as well. And just finish that one right there. All right, just kind of looking around. This one will just have a stem right there that I need to paint in at the end. Okay, looking very fun. I'm loving it so far. So depending on how much control you have over the current brush you were using, I am going to continue on with it. I'm going to grab my sap green. You could try just mixing it, or you could continue with using it straight from the well that you have it in. And we're just going to use a really thin pressure, and we're going to start to just paint in these green stems on our flowers. Okay. Very little pressure. You can run them right over your leaves if you want, or pick your brush up. So here, I'll paint part of the stem, pick my brush up, continue down, and finish it out at the bottom. Rotate your paper if you need to so you don't bump. A little bit of a stem, but don't forget we will do a little bit of a background to this, so we will certainly cover up our mistakes, which is a really fun way to do that. Okay, very light pressure, bringing that stem all the way down, and not forget the one I added that didn't have part of the outline right here. I'll just make it a stem like that. That is just so fun. I love the way that turned out. Very, very pretty. All right. So the background, you certainly can leave it white. I think it looks so pretty white like this, but the background is going to be, for this card, I'm going to do a light blue background. So kind of that really nice sky color. So let me go ahead and just clear out one of these wells. Can always use another, like a plate or some other type of mixing well if you are using this nice little handy travel set and you need more space. You can always use another type of mixing bowl. Okay. So the cerulean blue down here, that really pretty natural sky blue that we have, I'm just going to pull some out onto my mixing area, and I simply just want to add more water because I do want it to be lighter. And what I'm going to do is leave a little bit of a white edge or halo around all of the flowers. This just makes a really fun background. And then I'm also going to leave a little bit of a rough edge, white edge. Okay, doesn't matter where we start. So this is the technique I'm going to do is I'll use little pressure outlining this little area. And then I'll just go and start to fill in big blocks of white. So again, I am going to leave a little bit of a rough white edge, and I'm working with my size 6 brush, so I'm able to get a nice precise thinner area, but then also I'm able to get a bigger wash by pressing down a little bit harder. All right, you can see how that is already creating a really pretty background, and I'm leaving that little white edge around my flowers. And I think it's really fun if you can provide a little bit of variety of in your wash, in the blue wash. So some areas can be darker blue, some can be a lighter blue, meaning you're just going to add more water in areas that you want it to be a little bit lighter. But you can always go back through and add a little bit of a darker area. My only suggestion is to try and do it before the wash or the background dries. So you have to work a little bit quickly in case there's areas that you want to go back through and fix up. But again, it's messy, it's lighthearted and loose to create that really pretty watercolor effect. So some of these areas I am going to get in there in the middle between some of these flowers and stems the very best that I can. It might just be a really thin line. I love leaving this little white edge around. I just think it makes it so playful and fun. Okay, kind of doing a rounded rough edge corner. Continue to grab more paint as needed, and as always, you can rotate your paper. I'm gonna come back up here because I can see this part of my painting was starting to dry in the background, and I didn't want that rough edge there of how the water was going to dry and create a little bit of a rough edge. So I just quickly went back up to that area to continue it. All right. So some of these flowers or stems are really close to each other, and so you don't need to connect the blue background if they're just way too close. All right, grabbing some more. Gonna add a little bit of water just so I can thin it out a little bit. All right. Just having fun, working around, not worrying on what happens if my background does touch any flowers. It's okay. This is supposed to be playful. All right, gonna jump back up here. Again, I don't want to see the paint dry with a weird edge. So, or a weird line in the middle of a wash. So I'm just going to come on back up to that area and fill it in. Hopefully this technique brings you inspiration where you can create your own paintings and do something similar with a fun background, little white edge like this. I just think it creates such a beautiful pop of the subject. Because if I were to bring this blue right next to all of these flowers, the greenery, it just wouldn't pop the same. So maybe you can play around with that. Maybe on the next time you try this, bring the background all the way to the edge of your subjects and just see how you like it compared to leaving a little bit of a white edge. So again, if you want to make some areas darker, just grab more of that blue paint and drop it in. All right, we'll fill in this little piece there. And down into some of these sections. Sometimes you'll get nice little breaking spots here where you can pick up in a new area and not worry about a weird drying edge. All right, I'm going to turn this back around. Getting close. I think this will be such a great cheerful card. You really could use it for lots of occasions. It could be a fun Easter card if you decide that you didn't even want to put a little message on the outside, or you could use it for Mother's Day, or like I said, just a just because card is always a nice one to send to a friend or family member. Let them know that you're thinking of them. There's something that I would like to get better at is just sending cards for the joy of writing letters to people. I feel like we've lost that art of just sending letters. So hopefully these greeting cards will make us write more letters this year. All right. Continuing on. Some of these areas are a little bit more tedious because they're just more detail. Of course, I'm working a little bit faster just because I don't want it to dry funny. All right. But again, you can pick up as little or dark amount of blue. Like I mentioned, some areas are darker. You can kind of see right here had a little bit more color to it, and some areas over here are a little bit lighter and brighter. Just having a nice playful balance, I think, will be the key to this design. All right, maybe I'll rotate this way a little bit. Continue this one on down here. Around that edge. The sun is starting to peek out here, which is really nice, but you can kind of see it's casting a springy vibe of sunshine on my painting. Okay. Let's see. Anywhere else we want to add in some in between? Grab some more of our blue. Do my best to not overlap it, but sometimes I do touch the flower. But I don't think anyone will notice that. Okay, grab a little bit more. I always like to grab the color and mix it on a mixing area. Even though I'm using just that straight color, that way I feel like I can get it rubbed onto my brush and loaded onto my brush a little bit easier. And that way I know that I have not too much on my brush. If I'm going straight from that paint well, then sometimes I can get a little carried away with loading too much on my brush. All right, this little flower got right next to the edge. I'm just kind of trying to keep a similar size white border around these flowers. Okay, we did that one. We are so close. Some of these I will just let that poke out and not paint the blue around it, just because then it would make my blue come out too far. Okay. Just taking a look around to see if there's any like extra white where it could be filled in a little bit, but I think that turned out so fun and bright, and especially on a cold day, if you're painting in the winter, making all of your holiday cards, your greeting cards, this is something that will brighten your day for sure. All right, I hope you truly enjoyed this class. Please share your work. If you have Instagram, I would love to see it at Windswept Design Studio. You can tag me, and I cannot wait to paint with you in a future class.